Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're grabbing our financial blueprints, so to speak.
We are.
We're diving into budgetary control systems.
Yeah.
But forget the really dry spreadsheets for a moment.
Definitely.
Our mission here is to understand the DNA of this whole system, not just the accounting rules, but the inherent kind of political problems.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe most importantly, how the people, the ones who actually have to execute those numbers, how they behave.
Exactly. It's crucial, I think, to strip away some assumptions. A budget isn't just a forecast, right?
Right.
It's a detailed mechanism of operational control. And to really get its power, we need to look at the objectives first. What's it for?
Yes.
Then we can analyze the different types, the different ways of doing it, and then, dissect those behavioral pressure points.
Okay, let's start there then. The foundational question. What exactly is a company trying to achieve when it goes through all the effort of setting up a structured budget? So when we look at why companies bother with this often huge effort, 6 core objectives usually come up, and they start right at the top.
Right, at the strategic level.
First, the strategic framework, setting strategies and providing the basis for long-term planning. This really defines the company's direction, maybe for years.
And that vision, that high-level strategy, it then has to be translated into something people can actually do.
Yeah, make it real.
Exactly. That's where the budget shifts from, say, visionary to tactical. So objectives quickly move into more functional areas.
Right.
Well, ensuring clear communication across departments. Everybody needs to be on the same page, know the priorities, and then focusing on motivation.
Motivation. Giving employees specific, measurable targets to aim for. Sounds straightforward, but...
But it's not always. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Okay. And then comes the construction phase.
Sort of. You get the creation of the comprehensive master budget. That's the final sort of ratified document.
The big one.
Yeah. But the real nuts and bolts, the critical alignment work, that happens in the functional budgets.
So that's sales targets, HR costs, maybe specific production line spending.
Yeah.
The stuff that turns the strategy into actual action.
Precisely. And what's fascinating right from the start is this immediate, profound tension.
Between what?
Between two of those objectives we just mentioned, motivation and control.
Ah, okay. Explain that.
Well, think about it. To maximize motivation, managers often need targets that feel, safely achievable, gives them confidence.
Like something they feel they can actually hit.
To maintain strict organizational control and ensure real accountability, you often need hard targets. Targets that really stretch the organization.
So budgeting is trying to bridge that gap.
At its core, yes. It's the administrative attempt to somehow resolve that almost impossible tension. Control versus motivation.
Okay, so if the why is this delicate balancing act, strategy, motivation, control, and quality, we really need to look at the nuts and bolts now. How do companies actually build these things?
Mm-hmm.
There are different techniques, right? And I guess the choice really impacts the effort involved and maybe the quality you get out.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. Let's say the path of least resistance is often incremental budgeting.
Oh, sounds simple.
It is simple. You basically take last year's numbers and just adjust them, maybe tweak for inflation or some anticipated growth.
It's fast then.
Very fast. But its main flaw, its big weakness, is that it pretty much guarantees that any inefficiencies, any wasteful spending from the past
Just gets carried forward, baked in.
Exactly. You're repeating history, warts and all.
Okay, so if incremental is the easy way, what's the complete opposite? I've heard of zero-based budgeting. ZBB?
ZBB. Yes, that's the other extreme.
It sounds great theoretically,
Yeah.
right? Forcing everyone to justify every single line item, every dollar, like you're starting from scratch.
It does sound theoretically pure.
But isn't that just, well, political suicide in a big company? Doesn't it just make managers hoard resources, play games to survive the next justification round?
It absolutely ramps up the internal politics. Massively. ZBB is incredibly rigorous. And yes, theoretically, it yields a highly efficient budget because, well, nothing is sacred. Every assumption is challenged.
But the cost.
The trade-off is immense political capital needed, huge amounts of effort, time. You might get high accuracy, but maybe only by enduring some pretty serious internal warfare.
That's a critical trade-off. High accuracy versus high conflict. Okay, now let's look at another one that connects strategy more directly to cost. Activity-based budgeting, or ABB.
Right. ABB is interesting because it shifts the whole conversation.
How so?
Instead of just budgeting for departments like, why does marketing need $50,000? It forces you to focus on the activity.
Activities.
Yes, the resources required to perform the specific activities needed to meet your expected demand. Like, how much does the activity of generating one qualified sales lead actually cost us?
Ah, I see. So it links costs directly to output or actions.
Precisely. It drives a much deeper understanding of what actually drives costs in the business. The cost drivers.
Okay, that makes sense. And just to round things out, there are others related to timing and flexibility, right?
Correct. You've got rolling or continuous budgets. These are constantly updated, maybe looking ahead 12 months on a rolling basis so they don't get stale.
Prevents them becoming obsolete halfway through the year.
Exactly. Then you have fixed budgets, the classic model set once, usually annually, and they remain static. Doesn't matter if conditions change.
Which they always do.
Almost inevitably. And then things like forward budgets, looking further ahead. The key point is, choosing between these types is really a strategic decision. It's about how much rigidity you can tolerate versus how much responsiveness you need.
Okay, we can talk about rigor and activity drivers and spreadsheets all day long. But the second you introduce a manager, an employee, maybe a bonus structure, everything changes, doesn't it?
Everything. This is where it gets really, really interesting and complex.
Budgets are behavioral tools first, financial tools second.
I'd argue yes, often. They shape decisions immediately. The most direct effect is influence behavior.
Meaning?
Meaning, the budget directly tells managers where to focus their time, their resources, their energy. If the budget heavily penalizes cost overruns, guess what?
Behavior shifts to extreme cost control. Maybe even cutting corners.
Potentially. You might sacrifice quality or delay important future investment just to hit that number.
But there's a shadow hanging over this whole process, isn't there? You mentioned it earlier, budget slack.
Ah, yes. Budget slack, the management equivalent of sandbagging.
Sandbagging, good term for it. And it seems like it's almost baked into the system because of that motivation objective we discussed.
It often is. Look, it's a perfectly rational response from a manager in a high-pressure system.
How does it work, typically?
Okay, so budget slack happens when managers deliberately, maybe slightly, understate their potential revenue projections.
Yeah.
Or, on the other side, they overstate their cost estimates.
You mean example?
Imagine a sales manager. Based on their forecasts, talking to their team, they genuinely believe they can realistically hit, say, $1 million in sales next quarter.
Okay.
But if they report a target of only $900,000 in the budget process.
They build in a cushion.
Exactly. They essentially guarantee they'll blow past the target, look like a hero, get their bonus, maybe without even breaking a sweat. That $100,000 difference, that's the slack. It might be paying for their vacation, metaphorically speaking.
And this connects directly to another point, the level of difficulty of the targets themselves.
It does. There's a kind of Goldilocks effect here. It has to be just right.
Oh, so?
If the goal is too easy, which happens a lot, if there's too much slack, built-in motivation can actually drop. The achievement feels meaningless, unearned.
Right, no challenge.
But if the target is perceived as impossible, truly unattainable, motivation also drops. Managers just think, why bother? I can never hit that anyway.
So you have to find that sweet spot.
That elusive sweet spot, a highly challenging target, something that stretches people, but one that's still seen as achievable with real effort.
And how do you land there? Is it just guesswork?
Well, the key, or at least a big part of it, seems tied up in acceptance and participation.
Meaning getting people involved.
Yes. The more that staff are actively involved in setting their own targets, if you move towards more of a bottom-up approach rather than purely top-down dictation.
The more likely they are to buy in.
Generally, yes. They tend to accept and genuinely own the final budget numbers more. This participation is critical because, look, at the end of the day, a budget only really works if the people executing it actually believe in it, or at least accept it as fair.
So it sounds like the system's real effectiveness often doesn't just boil down to mathematical precision in the spreadsheet.
No, not at all.
But whether you've managed to create an environment that somehow minimizes that slack, but maximizes genuine buy-in and motivation.
That's a huge part of the puzzle, balancing control with that human element.
Which brings us neatly to the difficulties. I mean, the fundamental difficulty of any budget must be dealing with uncertainty, right?
Absolutely. It's inherent.
You're essentially trying to impose a fixed, static framework onto a dynamic, constantly changing world.
That's the core challenge, which means you face massive hurdles in forecasting, trying to predict demand, costs, market shifts, months or even years out. It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, crystal ball gazing.
Pretty much. And that's why those fixed budgets we mentioned, they can become irrelevant almost as soon as they're published.
Market conditions change, competitor makes a move.
Exactly. Now, flexible budgets are better. They adjust for volume changes. But even they still operate within predefined, often rigid assumptions about cost behavior. They're not truly dynamic.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
these inherent difficulties, the rigidity, the tendency for budget slack, this constant misalignment between a fixed plan and a dynamic market.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this has driven people to think about entirely new solutions.
It really has. Modern management thinking has moved significantly, pushed by these frustrations, and this has led to a really critical concept, beyond budgeting.
Lawn budgeting. Okay, tell us more about that. What does that actually mean in practice? Is it just no budget?
Not exactly no budget, but it's a fundamental shift. It's
Yeah.
really a recognition that the traditional fixed annual budget model is often too slow, too cumbersome, and just too susceptible to those behavioral games like Slack.
So what's the alternative?
Beyond budgeting essentially proposes shifting control away from centralized, fixed numerical targets set maybe a year in advance,
Towards what?
towards a more adaptive, often rolling planning process. And crucially, it focuses much more on relative performance.
Relative performance.
Yeah.
Compared to what?
Instead of just asking, did you hit the fixed sales number we set last year? It asks, how did your unit perform compared to key competitors? Or compared to the market benchmark? Or even compared to other similar units inside the company?
So it's more dynamic, more outward-looking.
Yes, and it tends to decentralize decision-making more, trusting managers to respond to real-time conditions, but holding them accountable against relevant benchmarks, supported by robust information systems.
Okay, that sounds like a big shift. If we're moving away from that tight central control towards something more adaptive, more dynamic, what kind of supporting tools does the data or research suggest you absolutely need for this to work? You can't just wing it.
No, definitely not. Quality data becomes absolutely paramount. For a system like Beyond Budgeting to actually function effectively, you need advanced tools, like the activity-based costing ABC model we touched on earlier,
Why ABC specifically?
because ABC gives you a far more accurate, granular picture of your true product costs, your process costs, compared to traditional methods. This gives managers the detailed intelligence they need to make smart, decentralized decisions.
Better data, better decisions.
Essentially, yes. You also need to ensure you have rigorous, reliable sources of data across the entire organization. Everyone needs to trust the numbers. And because this whole concept is, relatively speaking, newer, still evolving.
Still evolving. There's an ongoing need for systematic evaluation of beyond budgeting techniques. Does it actually deliver consistently better results than the traditional methods it aims to replace? The jury's still out in some areas, but the trend is clear.
So the overall evolution seems pretty clear then. It's a shift away from static annual control mechanisms, which we've seen can incentivize things like Slack, towards a more dynamic management style, one that's informed by high quality, maybe activity-based data, moving from just policing resources to actively measuring and managing performance relative to what's happening outside the company walls.
That captures the direction well. It's about becoming more adaptive, more responsive to the real world. #outro. So just to recap our deep dive today, a budgetary control system, it's really this exhaustive tool. It links those high-level corporate objectives, everything from strategy down to motivation to specific operational types of budgeting like ZBB or incremental.
But its functional success, whether it actually works well, is ultimately reliant on skillfully navigating and mitigating those crucial behavioral considerations we discussed, particularly that ever-present threat of budget slack.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you listening? Hopefully you now have a pretty complete map of this whole budgeting universe. You understand the pieces. And maybe the key takeaway is that the greatest problems, the biggest headaches, often stem from that unavoidable tension. The tension between the fixed nature of a traditional budget document and the highly variable, sometimes self-interested nature of human performance.
That's the core conflict.
All right, let's leave you with a provocative thought to mull over. Considering that fundamental tension we just highlighted between motivation as a key objective, which kind of thrives on achievable goals,
Right.
and budget slack as a behavioral reality, which exploits those softer targets.
Yeah.
Here's the question. What single adjustment to the type of budgeting system you use might most effectively eliminate, or at least drastically reduce, the incentive for slack, without completely sacrificing employee participation and buy-in?
That's a tough one.
It is. Think about that trade-off, that balance between control and culture, as you maybe look at your next financial forecast or participate in your next budget cycle.